I didn't think much of the stories people told about the Appalachian Mountains until something happened that I still can't fully explain even now. And this isn't one of those exaggerated internet stories either. This is something that changed the way I look at forests, isolation, and honestly, people, because whatever we ran into out there didn't feel like normal people at all. This happened back in late October of 2004 when I was 26. Me and 6 of my friends had planned a week-long hiking trip to a section of the Appalachian Range in Western Virginia. It wasn't supposed to be anything extreme, just a long disconnect from work and city life. No phones, no signal, just us, maps, and basic supplies. The group was me, Aaron, Luke, Melissa, Craig, Daniel, and Scott, and out of all of us, Scott was the most experienced. He had done multiple long-distance hikes before and knew how to navigate without relying on technology, which made everyone feel a lot more confident going into this. The plan was simple: follow a less crowded trail that cut through a deeper section of forest, camp along the way, and loop back out within 7 or 8 days depending on how fast we moved. Everything about it felt normal at the start, even exciting, like we were stepping into something peaceful and quiet. And the first day actually lived up to that. The air was cold but fresh. Leaves covered the ground in thick layers, and there was that constant sound of wind moving to the trees that made everything feel alive. But looking back now, there was something off even then, something subtle that none of us really paid attention to at the time, because the deeper we went, the quieter everything got. Not peaceful quiet, but empty, like the forest itself was holding its breath. By the second day, Melissa was the first one to point out. She mentioned how she hadn't heard a single bird all morning, which didn't seem right for that kind of environment. We joked about it at first, said maybe it was just the season or the cold, but as the hours went by, it became harder to ignore. No insects, no distant animal sounds, nothing except our own movement and the wind. And that silence started to feel heavier the further we walked, like it was pressing in on us. Even Scott seemed a little off. He kept stopping randomly and looking around like he was trying to listen for something we couldn't hear. When I asked him about it, he just shrugged it off and said it was probably nothing, but the way he said it didn't sound convincing at all. By the time we set up camp that night, the mood had shifted slightly. No one said it directly, but you could feel it. That underlying tension that didn't have a clear reason. We picked a small clearing just off the trail, set up 2 tents, started a fire, and tried to act normal. Talking, eating, laughing a little, but every now and then someone would glance out into the trees like they expected to see something standing there, watching. And the weird part is I caught myself doing it too without even realizing, like some instinct was telling me not to fully relax. That night, I woke up sometime around 3 in the morning. I don't know what woke me, but I remember immediately feeling like something wasn't right. The fire had burned down to almost nothing, and the forest was completely dark, except for faint moonlight slipping through the branches. At first, I just laid there trying to go back to sleep, but then I heard footsteps, slow and uneven, moving somewhere just beyond our campsite. My first thought was that it was one of my friends, maybe someone stepping out to use the bathroom or check something. But after a few seconds, I realized the direction didn't make sense. It wasn't coming from our camp. It was circling it. I held my breath and listened more carefully. The pattern was wrong. It wasn't steady like someone walking normally. It was step, pause, step, longer pause, like whoever was kept stopping to listen. And that's when the thought hit me that it might not be one of us at all. I slowly turned my head toward the tent opening, debating whether I should look outside or just stay still and pretend I was asleep. But before I could decide, the sound stopped completely. And the silence that followed felt worse than the noise itself, because now I knew whatever was out there wasn't moving anymore. It was just standing there, somewhere close. Then I heard something shift right behind my tent, close enough that I could hear leaves crunch under the weight of it. And a second later, I saw the faint outline of the tent fabric move slightly inward, like something had brushed against it from the outside. Not hard, not aggressive, just enough to make contact, enough to let me know it was there. I don't think I've ever felt fear like that before. It wasn't panic or adrenaline. It was this cold, paralyzing awareness that if I made even the smallest sound, whatever was out there would react. I stayed completely still, barely breathing, staring at the spot where the fabric had moved, waiting for it to happen again. But it didn't. After what felt like forever, I heard the footsteps start again, slowly moving away from the tent, then circling wider around the camp before fading off into the distance. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, and judging by the looks on everyone's faces in the morning, neither did anyone else. No one said anything at first, but you could tell something had happened to more than just me. Scott looked exhausted and unusually serious, like he already had some idea what we might be dealing with but didn't want to say out loud. We started checking around the campsite to see if we could find any tracks or signs of animals, but what we found didn't make sense. There were footprints, but they weren't like normal hiking boots or shoes. They looked uneven, almost bare, like someone walking without proper footwear. And they circled the entire camp multiple times, overlapping each other in a way that made it hard to tell how many there were. And that's when Melissa pointed out something else that made everything worse. On one of the trees near the edge of the clearing, there were markings carved into bark, not deep, but clearly intentional. A series of lines and shapes that repeated in a pattern. And once we noticed when we started seeing them on other trees too, scattered around the area like we had set up camp right in the middle of something we didn't understand. At that point, the idea that it was just an animal didn't make sense anymore. And even though no one wanted to say it directly, we all started thinking the same thing. That whatever had been out there the night before wasn't just passing through. It had been watching us, studying us. And for reasons we didn't understand, it hadn't made a move. At least not yet. We decided to pack up quickly and get back on the trail, hoping distance would solve whatever this was. But as we started moving, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't leaving anything behind. It felt more like we were being allowed to go. Like whatever was out there had already decided something about us, and we just didn't know what it was yet. About 2 hours into the hike, we realized something was wrong. Scott wasn't with us anymore. At first, we thought he had just slowed down or stopped for a moment. But when we called his name, there was no response. We spread out slightly, checking behind us, calling louder, but the forest swallowed every sound. And the deeper that silence stretched, the more real the situation became. Because Scott wasn't the type to wander off or fall behind without saying something. Especially after what had happened the night before. And that's when the unease turned into something heavier. Something closer to fear. Because it felt like a pattern was starting to form. And we were only just beginning to understand it. We stood there for a while calling Scott's name over and over, but the longer we listened, the more obvious it became that we weren't going to get an answer. And what made it worse was how quickly the forest seemed to swallow our voices. Like the sound didn't travel the way it should have, almost like something was dampening it. We tried to stay logical at first, telling ourselves he might have stepped off the trail for a moment and lost sight of us. But deep down, none of us really believed that, not after the night we had just experienced. And not after seeing those markings and footprints around the camp. There was this growing tension between us where no one wanted to say what they were actually thinking. Because saying it out loud would make it real. After about 20 minutes of searching the immediate area, we decided to split into pairs and look a little further out, but not too far. We didn't want to risk losing more people. I went with Aaron while the others spread out in different directions. And for a while, all we did was walk and call Scott's name, stopping every few seconds to listen, hoping to hear something back, a voice, movement, anything. But all we got was that same unnatural silence. And the longer it went on, the more it started to feel like we were the only ones making noise in a place that didn't want us there. At one point, Aaron grabbed my arm and told me to stop. I remember the way his grip tightened, like he had seen something he didn't want to believe. And when I followed his line of sight, I felt that same cold drop in my stomach. About 30 or 40 feet ahead of us between the trees, there was someone standing completely still. At first I thought it might be Scott, but the shape didn't look right. The posture was off, too rigid, too straight. And the clothes, or whatever they were wearing, looked pale, almost white against the darker forest. We both just stood there staring, trying to figure out if it was actually a person or just our minds playing tricks on us. And then it moved, not a step or a shift like a normal person would. It just sort of leaned slightly to the side behind a tree, like it was trying to hide, but didn't fully understand how. That was enough to break whatever hesitation we had. And we both started backing away slowly without taking our eyes off that spot. Neither of us said a word until we were far enough that the trees blocked the view. And then we turned and headed back toward the others as fast as we could without running. And I remember thinking how wrong the movement looked. Not natural, Not like hikers or even normal people. It was too smooth in some moments and too stiff in others. Like something pretending to be human, but not quite getting it right. The night felt endless, and when the sun finally started rising, none of us felt any relief, because the fear hadn't gone away. It had just been waiting. We packed up quickly and started moving again, pushing harder despite the exhaustion, desperate to get out, and for a while it seemed like maybe we were finally making progress. The forest started to look more familiar, the trail clearer, and for a brief moment it felt like we might actually make it. But then Aaron, who was walking just ahead of me, suddenly stopped so abruptly that I almost ran into him. And when I looked past him, I felt everything inside me drop, because about 50 yards ahead of us, standing across the trail, were at least a dozen people, all facing our direction completely. Still, their skin, or maybe paint, was a dull white, their clothes loose and uneven like they had been made by hand, and none of them reacted when we stopped. They just stood there watching, and then slowly, almost in perfect sync, a few of them began to step forward, not rushing, not aggressive, just controlled, deliberate movement like they already knew we had nowhere to go. Panic took over instantly, and without needing to say anything, we all turned and ran back the way we came, crashing through the trees, branches hitting our faces, not caring about direction anymore, just trying to put distance between us and them. I could hear footsteps behind us, not loud but consistent, matching our pace no matter how fast we moved. And that was the worst part. It didn't feel like they were chasing us to catch us. It felt like they were hurting us, guiding us somewhere, and eventually my legs gave out and I stumbled, hitting the ground hard. And for a second, everything went quiet except for my own breathing. I looked up expecting to see them right there, but instead I saw something else. More markings on the trees, closer together this time, forming a kind of boundary. And beyond that boundary, the forest looked different, darker somehow. And that's when I realized we'd been running in a circle. When the others reached me, we didn't even question it anymore. We just pushed through that marked area without thinking, and the moment we crossed it, something changed. The sound behind us stopped completely. No footsteps, no movement, nothing. It was like whatever had been following us refused to cross that line. We didn't stop running until we eventually stumbled onto a wider trail that we recognized. And from there we kept moving until we reached an exit point hours later. When we finally got back to civilization, none of it felt real. Trying to explain what happened only made it sound worse. Like something out of a story you wouldn't believe unless you were there. Search. Teams went out for Scott, but they never found anything, no body, no gear, not even a trace that he'd been there at all. And over time we all tried to move on, but none of us really did. Because every now and then I still think about those figures standing in the trees, the way they moved, the way they watched us without reacting, and the feeling that they weren't just random people living in the forest. They had some kind of system, some kind of territory, and we had walked straight into it, without understanding what it meant. And the worst part is I don't think they were trying to kill us. If they wanted, they could have. There were more than enough of them. They were faster, they knew the land, they had every advantage. But instead it felt like they were testing us, observing us, deciding something we weren't aware of, and whatever decision they made that night, Scott didn't come back from it. And I can't shake the feeling that we only made it out because they allowed us to leave.